Hey everybody, it's Dr. Joe, and today I'm going to show you my top 5 pelvic floor exercises. So let's get started.
Disclaimer alert, disclaimer alert.
So before we get started, if you haven't already, make sure and click on that subscribe button, especially if you have a question or a comment, otherwise I might not see it. And if I don't see it, how can I respond to it? Let's get going. So all these pelvic floor exercises are going to be on the floor. If you can't get on the floor, you can do them on your couch or your bed. So if you can't get down there, that's okay. Just get into a comfortable position lying down with your knees propped up. So with the pelvic floor exercises, a lot of times there's not a lot of movement because you're using those pelvic floor muscles. And so those are the smaller inner muscles. And so you're not going to have to see big movements. You just have to make sure you're doing the exercises correctly. So the first one is just going to be a pelvic tilt. And this is really just to kind of get things moving, get them going a little bit. But pelvic tilts really have to be done correctly or you're not really getting the exercise you need. A lot of times with pelvic tilts, people want to push with their legs and push down into the floor. And that's not really getting the pelvic floor muscles working. What you want to do is it's just like it sounds. It's a pelvic tilt. You're tilting your pelvis back so your back goes flat into the floor, but you're not using your leg muscles. So if you feel these muscles contracting, you're not doing it right. So a lot of times people say, imagine that you're taking your belly button and pushing it into the floor. I like to just say, imagine that someone's hand is underneath, or you can even put your hands underneath the curve of your back. And what you want to do is use these core muscles, these pelvic floor muscles, to rotate back to where you're flattening your back. So you should be able to see that a little bit. It's not a huge movement, but I'm flattening everything out and not using my legs. So you want to hold that for about 3 to 5 seconds and then relax. So you can see that movement, but again, not a huge movement. I'm breathing, I'm just talking normally, I'm not holding my breath. Make sure you're not holding your breath, and then holding that for, again, 3 to 5 seconds just to get that movement in there. And again, if you're doing it correctly, you should feel these muscles in here working, not your leg muscles. So maybe just start off with 5 or 10. You can do them a couple times a day just to get going. So then the next one is going to be a pelvic tilt clocks. And so clocks make it a little more difficult with the pelvic tilt, but then it's really starting to focus out on specific muscles and making you activate specific muscles. So look down at your belly and imagine that there's a clock sitting on top. So 12 is coming up towards me and 6 is going down towards my legs, and then just kind of imagine then the clock going that way. So first you just want to start off with going 12 to 6. So this is more now a continuous movement. So if I was going down to 6, I'm actually arching my back up a little bit, and then I'm coming up to 12 and flattening everything out. But again, not using my legs, using those pelvic muscles, those core muscles, if you want to call them that, to get that movement. So now I'm really arching up and I'm really coming down to 12 and 6. And then you can start doing maybe like a 5 to 7. So this time I'm going down at an angle. I'm pushing at one side. And so this one sometimes might be a little hard to see. I've had people that have a really hard time doing it because if you're weak on one side, you'll feel that maybe you can go down a little bit easier on one side, come back up to the middle each time, going down. And so if you have one side that's a little bit harder, my left side is a little bit harder because that's where I've had my most recent surgery, you can focus on that one a little bit more, but I would alternate back and forth. And then you can do, something like a 2 and 11. So now I'm coming up where I'm kind of flattening out over here and then alternating to the other side. So you see, then you're going at angles, but always start with the up and down because that's usually the easiest one, the 12 to 6 to get down. So you're figuring that out and then kind of start going at angles to find out where your weaknesses are. So again, just start off with 5 or 10 of these. You don't necessarily have to hold these unless you want to. You can do maybe like a 3-second hold really just to activate those muscles, but you're doing more than you think you are. So if you need pelvic floor exercise, if you know you're weak, don't go and do a whole lot just because they feel easy at the time, because you might end up feeling a whole lot later afterwards. So I would just start off with a little bit, a couple times a day, and then you can build up from there. So the next one is going to get a little bit tougher. This one is going to be using the ball to squeeze. So you can use either, if you got a soccer ball like me, you can use basketball. If you don't have a ball, if you have a yoga block, those work well. But what you want is, you don't want it to be too small and you don't want it to be too big. You want your knees to still be at about hip width apart. If it's too much or too little, then you're not quite getting the work that you need. So when you squeeze into the ball, you're activating some of those muscles. And so this one's going to be a pretty complicated or multi-exercise movement. So if you just want to start off in stages, that's fine. So just doing the ball squeeze might be enough for you. And then maybe do that 3 to 5 seconds. But if you can, go into the pelvic tilt first. And so you want to hold that pelvic tilt the whole time. And sometimes that's a little hard. And then do the squeeze. So again, just starting off with 3 to 5 seconds, holding that pelvic tilt, holding that squeeze, and then relaxing. If that becomes easy, then you're going to go one step further. So you're going to do the pelvic tilt, do the ball squeeze, and bring your hips and your knees to about 90 degrees, but try and hold everything. So if you're coming out of your pelvic tilt, if you feel like your back is coming off the floor, you're probably not ready for that stage yet, because you really want to keep that back flat into that pelvic tilt. So again, if all that becomes easy, flattening out the back, doing the ball squeeze, bringing it up to about 90, then put your hands on your thighs, on the front of your thighs, and push into your hands so you're activating your hip flexors. So this one, even though I'm trying to make it look easy, you might be able to see me shaking a little bit. It's tough. And if you're doing it correctly, it's harder than it looks. But anytime you feel like you're coming out of that pelvic tilt, that probably means your muscles aren't quite ready for that one. So that one's probably a lot of big steps there. So again, if you're not ready for it, just do the first steps of it and then slowly build your way up to doing the next ones. So then the next 2 exercises are going to really be focusing on the pelvic floor muscle called the obturator internus. And so this one is a really big one in the pelvic floor. And when it's not doing what it's supposed to do, sometimes you can have hip pain, you can have groin pain, you can have that internal pain. So this one's a really good one to work on, especially like for me, if I've had a labral repair and I'm still not quite strong in there, because that obturator internus helps keep that head of the femur or the hip joint stable. So again, you're going to have the ball or the block or something in between. If you don't have any of those, you can take a pillow and fold up the pillow so you have something to squeeze into. So this time I'm going to squeeze in, holding that squeeze. And now what I'm going to try and do, or imagine that I'm doing, you're not going to see the movement, but at my feet, they're going to stay in one spot. But I'm going to be pushing them out like I'm trying to get my feet to the edge of the mat, or I'm just pushing those out. So it's an isometric movement. I'm contracting the muscles, but I'm not moving. But I'm squeezing in up at my knees, and I'm pushing out at my feet. So squeezing in and then pushing out. And you should feel that on the inside, those inner thighs, down by the groin area. So squeezing in, and I'm pushing my feet out towards the edge of the mat. And so that's going to activate that muscle. So again, maybe just, if you can, hold it about 3 seconds, maybe work your way up to 3 to 5 and do about 5 or 10 of those. But again, this is working muscles that maybe you haven't really been working, maybe because of an injury or something else going on. So I would just start off with 5, maybe 10, do a couple a day, and then go from there. So the last one is still working on that obturator internus, but now I'm going to roll over onto my tummy and use a belt or a strap or something solid. So not like a resistive band, but something that's not going to give, because this is going to be, again, kind of an isometric exercise where you're activating the muscle, but you're not making a big movement. So what I want to do is I'm going to take the loop and I'm going to put it around my ankles. And so when I go over onto my tummy, I'm going to bring my knees up, and I'm going to kind of put my knees together and my feet together. Make sure you get comfortable. You don't want to be uncomfortable while you're doing this. And so now all I'm doing is I'm pushing my ankles out into the belt each way, like I'm trying to separate my feet. So as I'm pushing out, I'm squeezing in my core or the pelvic floor, kind of almost trying to tuck my tailbone in. So I'm tucking my tailbone in, squeezing, and then pushing out at the same time. So again, that's a 3 to 5 second hold. Doing those 5 to 10 seconds. or I'm sorry, 5 to 10 times, 3 to 5 seconds, a couple times throughout the day. So since there's really working on all those pelvic floors, if you just want to try the first couple ones, those pelvic tilts, the pelvic clocks, see how you feel, and then start working on the others, because the other ones are a little bit harder and they're working muscles that you might not have worked in a while. So there you have it. Those were my top 5 pelvic floor exercises. If you'd like to help support my channel, make sure and click on the link up there. And don't forget to subscribe by clicking down there. And remember, be safe, have fun, and I hope you feel better soon.